Welcome in here to Rover Sports and another edition of Shank and Spence and Rover Sports. And it's a Steven Spence show today here on 6:10 a.m. ESPN. And we are sitting here, and the NBA Finals have concluded, Steven. And what are your initial reactions from the series? The series goes 5 games. Did you think it was a competitive series, or are you a little bit disappointed with the series?
You know, Spence, I was a little bit disappointed with the series. Going in, a lot of people probably thought that Golden State had it, but they knew that Cleveland wasn't just going to sit down. They knew they were going to fight the whole series. But I thought it was a fun series to watch. It was just the whole series you could just see through all the games except for Game 4 that Golden State was clearly the better team.
So, I mean, a lot of people think Golden State was clearly the better team, but you look at Game 3, Steven, and I think that Cleveland should have won that game. Mm-hmm. And then you look at the first 2 games, and do you think that Tyronn Lue, I mean, you watched the second half of both of those games. It looked like LeBron James was gassed in those games. Do you think, like, either LeBron James at this age, like, needs to take his just needs to conserve more energy? Do you think Tyronn Lue was coaching poorly in these finals, especially the first 2 games? Because I look at these 2 teams, I think that Cleveland's pretty close to Golden State. A lot of people think that Golden State is definitely a better basketball team, a lot better than Cleveland. What do you think the gap is between those 2 teams, and do you think that the first 2 games Tyronn Lue needed to coach better?
Yeah, definitely you could see there were some coaching struggles in the first 2 games. Like Cleveland was right there in a lot of the games with Golden State. You could argue that, Cleveland needs to go out and get one more big guy to be able to compete with Golden State, but they were competing throughout the whole series. And like you said, like in Game 3, if KD misses that big 3 hit and it's 2-2, it's a whole new series. Could go back to Cleveland. Cleveland snaggies Game 6, and then it's a repeat of last year, and you never know what could happen.
You look at Tristan Thompson. He was awful in this series primarily, but Game 5 he played really well. J.R. Smith was incredible in Game 5. Like, a lot of people talk about how LeBron James didn't have a lot of help, and that's always kind of a narrative when he loses. But how talented do you think Cleveland is? Like, do you think Kyle Korver's a good role player? Do you think Darren Williams is? Do you think that these guys just really struggled in the finals, or do you think that Cleveland had a severe lack of talent issue on their hands in the series?
I think Cleveland has a lot of talent, it was more of a struggling problem. There were a lot of guys who didn't really step up. Like, they needed Tristan Thompson to step up. They needed Kyle Korver to hit some big shots. Darren Williams honestly didn't do anything from all the games I watched. And they're all great players. They're all solid players. And guys like Shumpert didn't do a whole lot. And that it rested on the hands of LeBron and Kyrie and Kevin Love. So they just needed to figure that out and, like, maybe even go after, another big guy to help them take down a team like Golden State.
Do you think that Kevin Love, like, when he went to Cleveland, do you think it's like Chris Bosh? I mean, it just seems when these guys play around LeBron James, like, they lose their physicality, and it just seemed like Kevin Love was a completely different guy in Minnesota. Do you think it's just how the NBA is evolving? They just lost all that weight and now is moving out to shoot threes? And do you think Kevin's more soft than maybe he was when he played with the Timberwolves?
Yeah, I mean, you could see definitely. I want to say Kevin Love's soft because you could see he set the record for the most rebounds in an NBA Finals game in Game 1. So he's definitely a big guy, but I think it might just be Cleveland's playing style, like how they play. They're just, they're a big driving kick type team, and Kevin Love is a spot up shooter. So I think, people are in the league relying more on the 3-point line, and they're not being as aggressive and taking it to the hole, and that just might be, how basketball's changing.
Yeah, I think that we've pretty much lost the post-game, player in the NBA, and I'm trying to think of, like, a back-to-the-basket type guy. Look at Jahlil Okafor. I mean, he's been ostracized in this city, and people compared him to a Tim Duncan, and you can throw the ball in the post and he can get stuff done. But even LaMarcus Aldridge, I mean, is there really even post guys in the NBA anymore that are effective? I mean, it's kind of becoming a lost art. Do you see that ever coming back to NBA basketball?
Yeah, I think one day they'll get back to that, having big guys, but you can just see now, like, even in college, it's so many spot-up shooters, so many shooters, they're relying on the outside shot, and I was talking to someone about Cleveland, like, if they're if they're going to get another player, who are they going to go after? And there were suggestions of maybe, like, they need a big man like DeAndre Jordan or something, and obviously a big guy down low will help. But at the end of the day, they're just gonna look for the 3-pointer. So
If Carmelo Anthony joined Cleveland, like, would you enjoy seeing that? And how do you think he would impact Cleveland? I don't think it's going to happen. Carmelo going to Cleveland, but what do you think about that sort of move if Cleveland were to make that move?
there are like a lot of free agents out there, like Paul George, Jimmy Butler, Carmelo Anthony. I don't know if I really see any of them going to Cleveland, but you could just see like just adding to that super team that Cleveland already is. I know LeBron doesn't think they are, but they are a super team, and just adding another big guy to their team would really help them out. And I think just with how good they are, you see like Paul George and Jimmy Butler and Carmelo, they're like the superstars of their team, and they're doing everything, and they need help. And you could see like going to a team like Cleveland, their role would be very limited.
I would love to see Carmelo go to Cleveland because I'd want to see how those egos would mix.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know LeBron's always got along with guys, and just like Carmelo Anthony, he's always had this kind of persona to him where he's always kind of been a selfish player. So he'd be more interesting than maybe a Paul George. I think Paul George would easily get along with LeBron. Jimmy Butler's definitely more of an alpha himself. So that you even saw the friction of the Chicago Bulls. Something that I think Golden State is so special in, Steven, is their ability to be so, unselfish.
Mm-hmm.
And
I agree.
and would you kind of like to see LeBron challenged by having like another ego in Cleveland?
I mean, I think he's doing a pretty good job so far. But like you said, like if you look at a team like Golden State, I don't see them like being slowed down if they stay at the same roster. Obviously, the cap room's going to play a big role in the next couple of years, but I don't see anyone that could really stand in their way except Cleveland. And because like we talked about this last time on your show, how the East is not as strong as the West is. There's not many teams that can compete with Cleveland. But if you wanna see a team take down Golden State, you might have to have those egos go at each other.
We're not talking about Eagles yet,
Not yet.
but we're close. What I was going to say, Steven, is when you look at the NBA, it's unfortunate that there's so many stars and like there's so many middle of the pack guys. Like even Oklahoma City has Russell Westbrook, and then you have Harden. It's all these one guy. It's all these generals. You're a Game of Thrones guy, so it's all these generals, and nobody seems to like really work collaborative. No one seems to be a collaborative team, and no one seems to develop guys. Like look at Minnesota; they have Wiggins and Towns, and we always talk about these guys or Giannis. In Milwaukee, and these teams just can't work together. It's kind of unfortunate. Maybe it has to do with the refs and coaching basketball, but how come we can't get any competition? How come no one can guard LeBron James? How come no one can guard these guys? Do you think it's because the refs just are calling the game so tight that you can't put your hands on these guys and you can't play physical defense anymore?
Yeah. The refs do play a big role in it. If you looked at Kyrie and the championship, you could see how he was such a dominant scorer, and anytime he would try to drive, they would call a foul. So it's like he's untouchable. You can't touch him. Like, what do you do? And the refs definitely play a big role in that. And you could see, like you mentioned, like guys like Wiggins and Karl Anthony Towns, like they're coming up in the league, and they're gonna be like LeBron's in a sense in the next couple of years. Like they're gonna be very good players. You can't touch them. You just gotta, play defense.
Yeah, I mean, you look at even Anthony Davis. It just seems like in the NBA, I don't know if guys are coasting, but it's just unfortunate. You look at Anthony Davis or DeMarcus Cousins, and these guys just can't seem to get to the postseason. They can't really seem to compete, and it just seems like when the push comes to shove, you always get LeBron, and you always get the same teams in the finals every single year. You look at college basketball; it's such a physical product, and I think if the NBA decided to go more physical, Steven, I think you'd maybe have a chance to stop, Golden State style of play. Like, look at Game 4, how ugly that game was. And then, do you think that, like, if you stop Kevin Durant, I think that's how you beat Golden State. You need to have, like, a Kawhi Leonard. So, do you think that that's true? Like, you just need a Kawhi, and then, like, how do you stop Golden State? Is there any way to stop these dudes?
Yeah, I mean, you saw like in Game 4, Cleveland they played good defense, and Golden State wasn't hitting all their shots, but they still scored 100 points, and Cleveland still won by 22 points or something. But they're just such a high-powered offensive team, and I really think Cleveland would have won the championship this year if Kevin Durant wasn't there. But you add someone like him, like it's not just like Jimmy Butler or something. It's Kevin Durant, one of the top 3 players in the league. Like he's tough to defend.
I think that you're so right that Cleveland would have won if Kevin Durant wasn't there. Because I think Cleveland got better. Like J.R. Smith, Kevin Love. I mean, they played well at home. Game 3, they were unbelievable. Kyrie and LeBron. Games 1 and 2, they were awful last year in the finals. I just don't understand why Cleveland couldn't dig in and compete. And then LeBron just looked gassed. They quit in the second half of those games. It just was kind of annoying to see that. But you look at Golden State, like how deep they are with their bench, guys like Iguodala and even Patrick McCall. I have a couple of more questions about Golden State. Do you think Draymond Green, if he was with the Kings or like the Timberwolves or the Magic, if Draymond went to the Magic, do you think Draymond would still be Draymond Green? Or do you know what do you get what I'm asking?
Yeah, I still think he would be, the aggressive player that he is. He'd still be kicking people, doing what he does. But obviously, if you put him in a different team that's not surrounded by Steph Curry, surrounded by Klay Thompson, surrounded by, now Kevin Durant, you can't say they're going to be the same player.
If Steph Curry went to the if he was drafted by the Pelicans, do you think Steph will be having the same kind of success, or do you think it's because of the vision of Golden State to create this modern basketball?
It's like the same thing with Draymond. Like if you surround them with good players, they're going to be like really good. But if you put them with not so great players, they're going to have to do more. They're going to have to be more reliant on themselves.
I look at guys like Patrick McCall, and I look at the Golden State. They just have different ways of developing these players, and I think that it's all about the development. I mean, Steph Curry, out of Davidson, a lot of people thought he'd just be like a Jimmer Fredette, and nobody really saw Steph being this kind of powerful, Hall of Fame, unstoppable player that he is, and I think it's just because of Golden State's infrastructure that they've created this juggernaut. I think it's all because of coaching, because of the culture of the team, and I don't think it's because of them being necessarily more talented than other guys. You look at Ben McLemore, and if you put him on Golden State, I guess you're right. Like, it is because of the superstar talent, It is because of the superstars. I wanted to ask about LeBron James. He's rumored to go to the Los Angeles Clippers or the Lakers. Would you consider that move soft on LeBron? Like, would you dislike that move because he already went back to Cleveland and because you think he should stay there? What do you think? What kind of impression would it make on you if LeBron went out west to L.A.?
I personally just don't see that happening. I read a couple articles on how, he delivered his promise. He got Cleveland their championship. Now he's out. And, with what he already did with leaving Cleveland and then he leaving Miami, like, nothing's, impossible. You could see anything happen, but I just don't see that happening. I think Cleveland's his home. He's an Akron boy. I think he's going to stay in Cleveland for the rest of his career.
Do you think that the NBA should be shortened from like 82 games to like 60 regular season games?
I think, being an avid basketball fan, the more games, the better for me, but I do see that potentially happening in the future just with injuries and with how players need their rest. So it's very possible that the games get restricted.
I want that to happen because I want like Jabari to be healthy and like Kawhi went down in these playoffs. George Hill, Nurkic. I always get Jokic and Nurkic confused, but the Portland center went down. So I would like it to be 60 games because then these games would be more competitive. Like the regular season to me, Steven, doesn't really mean anything. I mean, everybody talks about how Golden State won 73 regular season games, and that's a pretty good accomplishment.
Yeah.
But even Cleveland was just surrendering games to Boston. If Cleveland was a 5 seed, they still would have rolled through this conference. And you saw what they did at the Garden.
You could see how Cleveland, with this year, like when they played Golden State, I think they played LeBron, Kyrie, and Kevin Love maybe once or twice against them in their 4 meetings. They sat them a lot for a lot of games. So you could see it's very possible seeing games being limited to 60.
It's gamesmanship, and also, when you look at the NBA, like it's more chances to get hurt, more chances to burn out, and for LeBron, he knew he had to save everything for the summer. So if you started the season even in like Christmas Day is when a lot of people think you should start the season, because in November it's football season. We're watching football. We're not really tuned into the NBA. It's going on, and and this year with the 76ers, it's going to be fun having it in November to see the draft picks. But I think the NBA should start in Christmas. I think it should be like a 60-game season. I like how college basketball is.
Right.
I like even 20-minute halves. Do you want the NBA to be that, or do you think the games are too long in the NBA?
No, I don't think the games are too long. I think the games are fine how they are, 12-minute quarters.
I want to just have 12-minute games.
Nah.
Just less NBA.
Yeah, no.
And also, if the season went till August, there's such a dead period now, like as a sports fan. Like, are you kind of dwelling, like you have all this free time, summer months, it's more relaxing. Would you like there to be NBA basketball right now in the summer?
Obviously, it'd be a lot of fun to have basketball all the time, but you got to keep your sports to their certain seasons. Summer's all about baseball and
baseball and crappy Phillies baseball.
Crappy Phillies baseball. Maybe even someone might consider having football in the summer. Like that'd be awesome. But basketball, hockey, they're always gonna be winter.
How about
sports.
NFL Street?
NFL Street
in the summer. Get like Jeremy Shockey out of retirement, play 7-on-7 flag football. I mean, there's such a void in the summer, but I think the NBA should go till like July, and I think it's a summer sport. I mean, it's in the Olympics, in the summer, and you could start in like February, right as the Super Bowl's concluding, and you can go like all the way into the summer. I think that would be like entertaining.
It's such a long span of not having basketball. That's the only thing, but
and also these players want to record their stats, and
yeah,
I don't know, like if you give them that much free time, like how that's going to change. But I just think that like the back-to-backs, the schedules, maybe just have like a couple of games per week, more practice time. Those are just some suggestions, I believe, to kind of fix this NBA kind of lull. And Steven, you're a big Philadelphia Phillies fan. Have you been watching the Phillies this year, honestly?
Honestly, no. I mean, I've been watching a couple games because I just love watching baseball in general. But ever since, don't want to call it like a bandwagon type thing, but ever since, the Phillies started losing after, what was it, like 2011 or 2012, whenever that was, when they started going on the decline, when they started getting rid of their all-stars, Jimmy Rollins, Chase Utley, Ryan Howard just left, Cole Hamels left. That was them in their prime when they were constantly making it to the postseason. And now, when you have a team that's in last place all the time, they're tough to watch.
It's because I guess the cap really damaged the product. And you look at baseball, though. I just think baseball has like a lack of superstars that you can identify with. That you can like really like identify and notice. I guess Aaron Judge is kind of a star now.
Yeah.
Trout is a star. I mean, I don't know. It just seems like baseball, just like 10 years ago, was maybe a more popular sport, maybe because you have just more entertainment options out now.
Yeah, I know, and it's funny how like they call it America's pastime, but you see sports like hockey, like a lot of their all-stars are international guys. So I feel like now more and more baseball players are becoming international all-stars. So like it's not as like American, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and maybe it's, I guess, tougher to identify. I have nothing against international guys.
Yeah, not at all.
I just want to make that clear as we continue this podcast. I want to talk a little bit about the NBA draft. The NBA draft's coming up June 28th, I believe it is. Do you think the Sixers should trade their third pick in the draft for picks 5 and 10? Would you like to see more assets, or do you have a guy at number 3 that you want for the Sixers?
I think if they're gonna make a move with their draft pick, they should go after somebody like a veteran, like Paul George or someone. Kyle Lowry, I don't know.
A proven commodity.
I don't know if they're going to do that, but if not, I think they should just stick with their pick. I really like Josh Jackson. I really like De'Aaron Fox. I think they're two guys who can be potential big scorers in this league, and just how the Sixers are rebuilding. Like, it's a lot of people think that the Sixers are going to do all this rebuilding, get all these young new guys. They have JoJo. He's always going to be like he's our new Allen Iverson if you want to think about it like that. And now we have Dario, and Ben Simmons is going to be back. It's going to be very interesting, but, just rebuilding with having, like, all these guys being top 3 picks, I don't know how it's going to work out. But.
So next year, like if you were to predict, you wouldn't want a minutes restriction at all. Like I hope they don't give minutes restriction for any of the guys. But something I always analyze, and being a Sixer fan in Philadelphia like we are, I just want to see like an actual guard be able to control the game and be able to play. No offense to guys like Justin Anderson or Stauskas, but they're just not going to put. They're not going to draw interest of fans. And I'm worried if Ben Simmons gets hurt again, the team is just going to be an unwatchable product again. So that's kind of what goes in. As a fan, I just want to see a watchable product, and that's why I might lean point guard, because then, if you get a Lowry or you get a De'Aaron Fox, you're almost guaranteed to see something exciting.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying, Spence. Like, you could see, like, with Joel Embiid last year, he had his minutes restricted, and sometimes it would come to a point in the game where you need him in there, and the coach would take him out, and he would be pissed off, and, like, the fans want to see him stay in. But at the same time, I think it is good for the long run, because if you keep him healthy and all the guys are healthy, you could put a good year together.
Yeah, but, I'm just worried that if Ben Simmons gets hurt again, like that the team, would be lacking those guards. It's just all on Ben Simmons' shoulders. And I look at a guy like De'Aaron Fox, and he's such a wiry athlete. I really think having long arms is important in the NBA. Because to be able to stretch over defenders, and I think that's what makes Steph Curry. I think that's what really. I know Steph Curry's an unbelievable shooter, but Steph also has long arms, so he can throw shots off of the glass. And it's just such an advantage. And I look at De'Aaron, and he'd be able to add that quickness to this team where Josh Jackson is so raw that you'd be relying so much on Ben Simmons. I don't see Ben Simmons as a guy, Steven, that's going to be dribbling the ball in every single possession up the floor. I see him more like a post forward, and if he gets the rebound, he'll have the ability to create, and he just doesn't need to dribble it every single time.
Yeah, I mean, with his height, he's 6'10" or something.
Yeah, he's 7 feet.
He's almost 7 foot. Like, he's very big. You can see he's like a LeBron type guy.
Yes,
he's not. I've watched a lot of his summer league videos when he played last year. He's a big passer. He's not a big scorer.
Right.
He is big and strong, so he can get to the hole. But I do see him bringing the ball up if he's able to, control the possessions and able to, dish out points.
Yeah, I think that it's funny. He always passes up shots, to try to find other guys, and I think he could. I think he's he could be one of the most exciting players in the NBA if he plays. Mm-hmm. I mean, and the thing about Ben is he's kind of seems like a quiet guy. Like, even though he wasn't playing this year, he just he's been out of the limelight for so long, and people almost kind of forget Ben Simmons is and they don't forget he's on the Sixers, but. It's just such a question mark with this team, Steven. And what do you think? I know we talked about the NBA and the problem of having good talent. And the reason I think the NFL is a more compelling game is because you have a team like the Baltimore Ravens, right? That every year they knock on the door, and then one year, Joe Flacco burns down that door and they eventually win. You look at the Raptors and you look at the Pacers. They had their years where they won playoff series, but they had zero chance when they met LeBron James. With that being said, do you think Sam Hinkie is a con artist, or do you think that or do you praise Sam Hinkie for where the Sixers are today?
There's not a lot of guys who could do what Sam Hinkie is doing. A lot of people probably don't agree with the moves he's making, but I do praise him for all the hard work he's putting in and just the picks he's going after. People could say we're tanking, and that might be a strategy, you have to do to
Some people would say that he's not working hard at all because he's just self-destructing the team, and it is such a long time to see Sam Hinkie's vision kind of play out, and a lot of people think Sam's lazy. They'd want to see playoff basketball. They'd want to see chemistry. They look at MCW, Jahlil Okafor, his failures. A lot of people in this city look at Sam Hinkie and just think that he's kind of just a con artist that was lazy, that just playing lottery basketball.
Yeah, I know you could talk about we've talked about how the East isn't very strong, but the Sixers last year were knocking on the door for the playoffs, and this year I wouldn't be surprised if they grab that 7th or 8th seed with how they're doing. And
they're gonna have to.
It's progress. They've been so bad. They've been one of the worst teams in the East for the past several years, and they're improving. So to a certain extent, you have to praise.
So you think that there is progress? If Joel Embiid gets hurt again, Ben, even if Ben's healthy, you think that the Sixers are in a really good position now to make the postseason this year. You think that Sam Hinkie, you think it was all kind of worth it. You think it's all going to be worth it at the end of the day.
I do, and it's hard to think that rookies and these sophomores are going to have outstanding years. But if Ben Simmons is the first overall pick that we think he's going to be with Joel Embiid out there, and if you get a guy like Josh Jackson who's going to score, like we could be a good team.
A lot of people think like that the NBA is just that Sam Hinkie is just playing like a bunch of lottery picks, and I happen to agree with you because I think the NBA is kind of flawed in the sense that you do need to purposely be awful because you need like the 3 stars to compete, and now you have Ben, you have Joel Embiid. I'm not that confident in Joel Embiid's career, to be honest. I mean, I think Joel is an extremely talented player. You saw him shoot the basketball. He's really a great defender. He's dominant. He's fast. But I think he's I don't want to see him be a Bo Jackson or a Rob Gronkowski. And I'm just so worried about how reckless he plays the game that I think that he could be limited by his injuries.
Yeah, he definitely has to be very careful with his body. His body is very fragile. And that's why I think limit restrictions for the next couple of seasons for him isn't a big deal. Like
I think that you're right.
People,
and like with
people
Ben,
hate that they have to wait all this time to see us be a good team. But you know what? You don't want to rush things and ruin all the hard work that the Sixers are putting in.
Yeah, and then the Sixers, if they do get Josh Jackson, they do need guys to space the floor. I agree. This team needs to be a playoff team next year, or Brett Brown, or there needs to be serious changes. I want to see this ownership group pony up money. Would you like Kyle Lowry to come here, or do you think we should keep that cap open? Because I'm not in love with Kyle Lowry. Like, if I were the Sixers, this is what I would do. I would draft De'Aaron Fox as a point guard, and then I'd look for maybe, if you get a guy like J.J. Redick, I think that he would help this team in terms of veteran leadership. He's been on some successful teams.
I think Kyle Lowry is a very good player. He's a Philly guy. Went to Villanova.
Yes.
Would love to see him play for the Sixers, but he is getting older, and you've seen he can throw these 30-point games out there, but then he can just be very off and just not do a whole lot. And
yeah, and he's older. I like De'Aaron Fox. I really think that should be the pick because I look at Josh Jackson, and Jackson's game, he's kind of like a small forward that's hit or miss. His shot is very inconsistent, and you saw another kid like Josh Jackson come out of Kentucky, and that's Marcus Gilchrist, and he really hasn't panned out in the NBA because he hasn't been able to really shoot and score. I just think Jackson's so raw that there's big bust potential in his offensive game. I'm just nervous about that pick.
Yeah, and it's also I don't want the Sixers to possibly trade for the 5th and 10th pick.
Yeah,
because I think they're at risk of not
getting anybody and then you just get more assets, and then the 10th guy could easily be be a miss. I mean, I do look at Dennis Smith, and he is a guy out of NC State that's also a point guard that's just extremely competitive, and I think he would be a nice fit. The thing about Kyle Lowry that makes him different than De'Aaron Fox is that Kyle Lowry, they see Ben Simmons as kind of a LeBron James player. So you want to put the thing about Kyle is that Kyle can shoot. You could put him off the ball where a guy like De'Aaron's just going to be a slasher, so everyone's so worried about the fit. Do you think you need a shooter at that guard position? Or do you think, or you're okay with having like a slasher to play with Benny?
Yeah, I think we definitely need a shooter. There's not really a shooter on the Sixers team. There are a couple guys, but we don't really have that one guy, who once the ball's in his hand, he's going to knock down the shot. I was actually thinking it's possible, this was just a thought I had, that if the Sixers trade the 3rd overall pick and go for somebody big, that guy could be Jimmy Butler. He's a free agent, and I see him fitting in well what the Sixers are going for. And if you think about, that starting lineup with Jimmy Butler, Dario Saric, Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, and whoever you get at point guard, it looks like a good team out there.
I mean, I'm going to disagree with you about Jimmy because I think Jimmy's just a ball stopper. I'm just worried if he can if he can pass the ball that well. I don't want to see because he's just such an ISO guy that I'm just I'd rather have Paul George honestly than Jimmy. I love how Jimmy competes, but I just think Jimmy's too ISO.
I just don't think Paul George would come to Philadelphia. That's all. But the Sixers just do need.
I'd be worried about
that
Jimmy
scorer.
Butler actually coming in because you'd have to give up so many first-round picks, and I just think Jimmy kind of ruined the. I mean, I'm not going to say ruined the culture of the Bulls, but I just think Jimmy's too ISO oriented for the Sixers. Do you kind of see that?
Yeah, I just think the Sixers they don't have that big scorer out there, and they need somebody.
Jimmy Butler put asses in seats, and that would be, I have to admit, like if the Sixers did get Jimmy Butler, I just want to see them be an exciting product. I'm just worried that Josh Jackson will get drafted. He won't be able to shoot. Then Ben might have trouble staying healthy. You won't have any guards. And then if Ben will have to carry the load. You need to get some kind of guard play. And if Ben's the only point guard, it's very worrisome. I think you need to get another guy that can handle, that can pass, that can dribble the ball, up the floor. Just even walking it up is so important. The good news is we have a couple of more weeks to debate. It's very interesting to see what the Sixers are going to do. This draft is so unpredictable. I think it's one of the more exciting NBA drafts that we've had ever. When you look at this draft of Lonzo and Fultz, I don't think you have an unbelievable can't-miss talent, but you have guys I think could be all-stars in this draft.
Yeah, we definitely have a much better draft class, I would think, than last year.
Thank you for joining us here on Rover Sports The Show, and big ups to Steven for coming in again, and we can't wait to see you guys very soon, probably next week. Take care, guys.